and welcome to Let's Talk About It. I'm Sheri Lopez, human trafficking survivor, author, educator, and founder of Pearl at the Mailbox. Today we're talking about a word that seems to be everywhere lately, and that word is grooming. The problem is that the word is often being used incorrectly. People use it to describe books they disagree with. They use it to describe movies, television shows, social media posts, advertisements, school lessons, political viewpoints, and almost anything they find inappropriate or concerning. While books, movies, websites, social media platforms, and other forms of media can absolutely influence thoughts, attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors, they are not capable of grooming someone on their own. Grooming requires human to human interaction. That distinction matters. If we misuse the term grooming, we risk confusing the public about what actual grooming looks like and making it harder to identify real offenders. So, where did the term grooming come from? The modern use of the term grooming in child sexual abuse prevention began emerging in research and professional discussions during the 1970s. Researchers and child protection professionals observed that many offenders did not begin with force or violence. Instead, they carefully built relationships with children and often with the adults around them before abuse occurred. Over time, professionals recognized that this process followed predictable patterns. The offender was preparing or grooming the victim for future exploitation. As awareness increased through the 1980s and 1990s, the term became widely used by child protection experts, investigators, prosecutors, and victim advocates to describe the deliberate process offenders use to gain access, trust, compliance, and control. What grooming really is. Grooming is a deliberate process used by an offender to build trust, reduce resistance, create dependency, and prepare someone for exploitation. The goal is not friendship. The goal is access and control. The victim often does not realize they are being groomed because the process is designed to feel normal, caring, exciting, supportive, and even loving. Many victims truly believe they are in a genuine relationship of some sort, and that is exactly why grooming is so effective. Let's talk about the 7 steps of grooming that I have shared before, but it's important for people to really understand what they are. So, over the years, through my own experience as a survivor and the stories of countless other survivors, I've identified 7 common stages that occur. Number 1 is targeting. The offender identifies someone vulnerable. This may be a child, a teenager, a lonely adult, someone experiencing family problems, someone seeking acceptance, or someone who simply has unmet emotional needs. 2 is gaining trust. The offender begins building a relationship. They may appear kind, supportive, understanding, generous, or protective. Trust is essential before exploitation begins. In a lot of ways, we are just naturally trusting of people until they have given us a reason not to trust them. And that is why vulnerable individuals can fall in this trap of being groomed rather easily. So number 3 is filling a need. the offender starts providing something the victim is missing. It could be attention, it could be affection, being validated, feeling accepted, even just wanting gifts that way can be something important to the vulnerable person, and so the groomer will provide that or fill that need. Financial support, a sense of belonging, and then eventually the victim begins to rely on the offender. As I've shared before, I was seeking a lot of attention and validation when I was going through my grooming process. I just wanted to find a group where I felt accepted and belonged as a teenager. Isolation is number 4. The offender slowly separates the victim from healthy influences. This may include family, friends, mentors, pastors, teachers, or anyone who might question the relationship. Isolation often happens gradually and can be very difficult to recognize. The groomer is slowly taking this process of filling the vulnerable person's brain with all this information about why they're the one that really cares about them rather than their family or support structure. Number 5 is sexualization. This is important in the grooming process because this step needs to happen in order to say that grooming occurs. This is where boundaries begin to change, conversations become more personal, secrets are introduced, sexual topics, images, jokes, touching, or behaviors may slowly be normalized. The victim's comfort level is intentionally manipulated. Little by little, this desensitization begins. Little by little, so subtle that you just don't really pay attention to it. And then before you know it, it's just normal because it was subtle. Number 6 is exploitation. The offender begins benefiting from the relationship. This may involve sexual abuse, trafficking, coercion, financial exploitation, or other forms of victimization. This is often the point where others finally recognize that something is wrong. But by then, it's usually really difficult to get a person out of a grooming situation, but it certainly can be done. Number 7 is maintaining control. The offender works to keep the victim trapped. This may involve threats, making them feel shameful or embarrassed, fear of being hurt or family, friends, loved ones being hurt, lots of manipulation, guilt, like, oh, you started this, you wanted this, you really did, and guilt. And then trauma bonding is where you've built this emotional relationship with your groomer and you feel a sense of loyalty to them in some way. It could be financial dependence or convincing the victim that nobody else cares for them. It's so sad when you think about this, but control helps ensure the victim remains silent. It's so heartbreaking because the grooming process is very calculated and also very hidden, especially with teenagers, because a lot of the behavior displayed, people say, oh my goodness, that's how a teenager behaves. But like I always say, no zip code is immune to being groomed and possibly trafficked. No child, no vulnerable adult is immune. This is why everybody needs to educate themselves about the 7 steps of grooming, to start looking for that, and also making sure that you have an open door policy with the kids or vulnerable people in your life, saying, hey, I'm never going to judge you, just come talk. That's what we do. We need to learn to talk to one another. So people talk to me all the time about books, and can they groom? No, they can't groom, but yes, they can influence people. Movies can influence people. Music can influence people. Social media can influence people. Television can influence people, but influence is not grooming. Let me say that again. Influence is not grooming. A book cannot build a personal relationship with a child. A movie cannot isolate a child from family members. A television show cannot slowly build trust and manipulate a child's emotions. A social media platform itself cannot groom someone. However, a person using that platform absolutely can. The difference is human interaction. Even somebody reading a book, that's not grooming, that's influence. So, again, without human interaction, grooming is not occurring. Grooming requires a relationship where one person intentionally manipulates another person for exploitation. Why accurate language matters. When we call everything grooming, we weaken the meaning of the word. Parents become confused. Communities become confused. Professionals become confused. More importantly, we risk mixing actual grooming behaviors happening right in front of us. The focus should not be on labeling everything as grooming. The focus should be on identifying the behaviors that offenders use to gain trust, create dependency, isolate victims, and prepare them for exploitation. That's what grooming is, and that's what prevention requires us to understand. In closing, as someone who was groomed at 15 years old and trafficked for 7 years, I can tell you that grooming rarely looks dangerous in the beginning. It really does look like kindness, giving attention, being really understanding. That's why education matters about the grooming process, and I will continue to talk about this until we get a better understanding out there. The more accurately we understand grooming, the better equipped we are to recognize it, interrupt it, and prevent exploitation before it begins. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Let's Talk About It. If you'd like to learn more about grooming prevention, survivor-led education, my books, my training programs, or the National Grooming Prevention Hotline, please visit pearlatthemailbox.org. Until next time, let's keep talking about it.